Given that Epic Games is now trending towards multi-stage cash cup and tournament events, we've got to assume that the next season of solo FNCS is bound to be the same. And since you guys know that there's only 6 games to qualify for the next round, the early game fights are now more important than ever. Scuffing even just one off-spawn fight could be the difference between qualifying or not. That's why I think it's very important that today we talk about how you guys are going to win every off-spawn fight to ultimately help you guys qualify for the next season of FNCS. So we're going to be breaking this video down into 2 parts, which is going to be the game sense and mechanical aspect of off-spawn fighting. So if you guys are excited for the video, make sure to go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Over 90% of you guys aren't subscribed to the channel yet, and I make this content just for you guys, so if you guys want to show some support right back, you guys already know what to do. And with that said, let's get right into the video. Alrighty guys, so naturally the first thing we have to cover when we're talking about off-spawn fighting is your drop. It is so incredibly important that you guys master your drop for many reasons. Now the first and most straightforward thing you guys can do to maximize your off-spawn fighting is give yourself the best chance by having the best drop in the lobby. You know, when you pull out your glider and you're gliding down and sometimes your opponent will land on the gun first and kill you. Yeah, well that's absolutely a terrible excuse, because if you guys had learned your drop spot and learned how to drop from the bus, you guys would have never had that problem to begin with. So for me personally, I've been landing at dirty docks for the past few seasons, and over time I have become an absolute master at dropping for the spot. I personally go for the blue warehouse all the way by the beach every single time, and no matter where the bus goes, I know that I'll have a perfect drop for it. I figured this out by hopping into a bunch of custom matches just like you guys are seeing me do right now, and figuring out based on where the bus is going, what's the most optimal place for me to jump out of the bus, what's the most optimal place for me to have my glider pulled out, and what's the most optimal place for me to land. And as a result, no matter where the bus goes, whether it's on the coast, north, south, east, or west, I'm able to pull my parachute out at the exact right time and land myself right on the roof, which is going to give me the best chance to pick up a weapon, beam an opponent, or at least beat my opponent if he's going to try to 50-50 me. And if you guys don't have a custom code, you guys can literally just drop into a solo match and then back out after you drop. Now after about 50 to 100 drops, you guys are going to get a pretty good understanding of where you guys need to jump out of the bus based on what direction it's coming from. Now guys, in order to totally master a drop spot, you guys need to put in a lot of time. Thus, I want you guys to consider only having 1 or 2 drop spots for the entire season. And think about it logically guys, if you're jumping around between 4 or 5 spots, your brain is going to be kind of scattered as to how you're going to play each spot, and thus make it so that you're not playing optimally. For me, I mainly land dirty docks. I've been doing it for a while, but on the off chance that dirty docks just isn't working for me, I'll switch it up by going to the houses just north of Pleasant Park. That's like my backup option, and I know exactly how to play that spot as well, how to land for the house that I want to drop at. I want you guys to employ the 1 main drop, 1 backup drop plan, in contrast to just going wherever, whenever, and not really caring about the game theory regarding each drop spot. Now that we got that out of the way, I want to talk to you guys about some mechanical tips that you can apply to the early game. While I do have some low material high ground retakes, I've already shown some of them on a previous video, and I'll link that down below. And in this video, I want to talk to you guys about how you guys want to go into an early game fight. Half the battle is putting yourself in a good position, and the other half of the battle is being able to exploit your opponent's weakness. And both your and your opponent's weakness is that you guys are probably going to be very low in materials. So I want you guys to, at least in the early game, learn how to spam the hell out of your spam weapons. I want you guys to use your AR, your SMG, and absolutely obliterate your opponent's materials. If you guys take high ground, you guys can literally burn him down from all of his materials, which is not a lot to begin with, down to almost nothing. And guess what? When you're low on materials, what do you do to your opponent? You jump on their head. It's not any different. Your opponent's going to want to jump on you when they realize they're depleting from mats. And if they're going to jump out at you, then you're going to get the first shot at them every time because you have that common knowledge. So I want you guys to deplete their materials and then hold your shotgun out. This tip has helped me in so many early game fights because you literally are going to get the first shot every time. And you know, if you're fighting in the early game, what's the odds that they have 200 HP and a bunch of mats? No, not very high. They'll usually be on around 150 HP plus maybe 20-30 builds. First you ruin their materials, then you ruin their health. It's that simple. Also, in terms of practicing the early game fights, I really recommend you guys use a 1v1 realistic map with a little twist. The gameplay that you've been watching for the past minute or so is actually 1v1 realistic fights between me and my buddy, but the only thing that we did differently is we dropped all of our materials except for wood. Now what this does is it forces us to engage each other a lot quicker than we would have if we had the brick and metal and, you know, the hard mats. And you guys have watched me deplete the opponent's mats, which forces him to get into an unoptimal engagement with me. And I still have a decent amount of mats to get myself out of a bad spot if needed. Alrighty folks, for the next part of the video, I want to talk to you guys about what happens after you drop, after you've got the best drop in the lobby. what do you want to do? So I'm going to be using lootlake.info to demonstrate my drop spot, Dirty Docks, and give you guys a run through what goes through my head when I go and I spawn in. So as I said earlier, I do like to drop right here at this blue building. I've practiced my drop hundreds and hundreds, if not at this point thousands of times. So I know that I'm going to get to the top of this building where there's 2 loot spawns the first time, no matter what. Now after that, I'll go and I'll pick up the 3 chests. And there's a couple of pallets in there as well, and I'll know that I'll typically be at around 15 builds or 150 mats, mostly wood, so you're not gonna have a lot of builds at all, but after you get the 3 chests, you're gonna have 9 builds. A couple pallets is gonna give you about 5 or 6 builds. Yeah, you're gonna be at around 15-17 builds at the end of the day, and that's very important that you have a good expectation of where you're gonna be at when you have your initial loot. Typically you'll either have an SMG or some kind of shotgun, like a green pump or a green tac. You'll have something that's gonna deal a decent amount of damage, and you'll typically not have nothing at all. I mean, if you get really bad luck, you might get a couple ARs from the chest. At least you're gonna have something, usually around 50 shield on average after you get 3 chests. But depending on the loot I get and depending on the people that contest me is gonna dictate what path I take after that. Now once again, I'll try to always alpha that single drop spot, right? That single building, and it'll usually be good enough for people to back off and, either last second they'll go to this silver building, they'll back off once they see that I have the better drop, or even they'll back off to one of these 2 buildings. And there's a lot of chests at Dirty Docks, so no matter what, people are going to be expected to have decent loot. So you can't always just push people because the houses are a little bit spread out, and you have to understand that based on the terrain of each POI, you're gonna have to want to respond differently. So in this case, there's a lot of open area. If you rotate, you're gonna probably get beamed if you don't be careful. So given that there's a lot of open area, what do I want to do next? If I have absolutely god loot from that one building and I really want to get aggressive, what I'll typically do is find the spot that has the most materials. And conveniently enough, there's a spot that has about 8 pallets right here, right outside of blue. So you can get 400 wood right there and be able to use that to your advantage, so you can actually push your opponent and be able to overbuild to get closer to them so that you can secure the elimination. Now in a scenario where I don't exactly care for pushing the opponent and I need better loot, I'll try to go get better loot before I get more mats. There is more buildings that I can attend to. Once again, the silver building right here, if that wasn't looted at first, or if I'm in a really desperate spot, I can go for these 2 side chests on the outside. There's walls around, so I usually have a little bit of cover, and if push comes to shove, I'll use the little bit of mats that I have left to my advantage. Now, knowing that I have a really good positioning here, that people usually will not push me unless they have really good loot, and given the fact that there's a lot of dead area, such that people wouldn't really want to come all the way to where I'm at. If multiple people are landing here by me, usually they're going to be fighting each other, and I know that, so I'm going to use that to my advantage. So more often than not, I'm actually going to be getting these pallets, and I'm going straight to a fight. So what I did just there was I showed you all the scenarios that I have in my mind based on what other people do. If I have good loot, what do I do? If I have bad loot, what do I do? If I don't have a lot of mats, what do I do? If I have a lot of mats, what do I do? Basically, I'm giving myself this game plan. Now for you, you're probably not landing Dirty Docks. There's 25 POIs. You're probably not going to actually use any of this information for yourself. But what I want you to do is I want you to actually extrapolate what I'm talking about, the little mental checklist that I'm making for myself and explaining to you. And I want you to go and do that right now. Go to lootlake.info. I want you to pull it up, and I want you to say, okay, this is where I usually drop. This is where I might drop if I can't get there for some reason, if I have the worst drop. This is my plan. These are my 2 routes out. These are my routes if I decide to be aggressive, if I decide to be passive. Basically just telling yourself beforehand how things are going to play out, because then when you're actually in the game, you don't have to make that decision because the decision is already pre-generated for you. You don't want to be scatterbrained, especially off spawn when you are at the most critical part of your game, when people have the least amount of loot and are most easy to kill. Waiting even 5 to 10 seconds is enough for someone to pop a big pot. So you either want to put the pressure on quick, or you want to decide that you don't want to do it at all. And just one more footnote for that point, just make sure you guys are VOD reviewing your gameplay. If you see something that's not fully optimized, or you see something that you can take advantage of, make sure to go ahead and fix it, and you guys can reference Loot Lake info and make your plan and adjust your plan accordingly. To conclude, I do have to admit that fighting in the early game is one of the highest RNG situations that you're going to be put in the entire game of Fortnite. But that should never be an excuse. You should always give yourself the advantage in every situation using the aforementioned tips. Going into the game with the absolute best drop possible. The best drop in the lobby is going to get you that weapon first 99% of the time. And once you've alphaed up the positioning, you guys can take a look at where everyone is and decide what loot route you want to take as a result. And then, based on your loot, you guys can decide, do you want to fight? Do you want to not fight. And then when you do engage in those early game fights, you guys have the proper idea of what you need to do to force your opponent to be predictable so that you can shoot them with ease. You'll get that first shot and you're always going to be the one to benefit. And once again, as per usual, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys did enjoy this video, please go ahead and leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I cannot stress how much you guys' support has really meant to me. It's been insane, and hopefully you guys can continue supporting my content, and I'll continue producing this every single week. With that said, I'll see you guys all in the next one.